Hey guys, welcome back. This week I thought we'd work on a wrap card. I actually need to complete this project for one of my design team assignments. So this is a quickie that we're going to make a heart designed wrap card. And I know you've all seen wrap cards, and we're just going to do it using our heart dies. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I want to talk to you about the items you're going to need in order to get started with this project. You're going to need glue. I'm using just regular Elmer's school glue that I put in one of the squeeze bottles. Yeah, that's adjusting. Okay. You're going to need scissors. I have sometimes grip problems, so I like these Fiskars with the spring handle because so if you have arthritis or some other issues with your hands, like weakness in your hands, these are a great solution. Otherwise, you can use any kinds of scissors. These are the Holtz, and then the cutter bees are also two of my favorites. So you just need a good pair of scissors. They need to be sharp so you can get a clean cut. All right. You're going to need a pokey tool so you can poke the little holes on your die cuts to get them to release from your dies. You'll need Wink of Stella or some other type of glitter brush. I'm using Wink of Stella. Use whatever you have. You'll need a pencil because we're going to do some tracing, and you'll need your bone folder because we're doing some scoring. If you don't have a scoreboard, you can use this T square ruler to just draw a line on the paper. This video is going to be on my beginner's blog, A Place to Start. So for those of you who are beginners and you may not have purchased a lot of these things, that's fine. You can basically do most of these projects without a lot of fancy tools. If you don't have a scoreboard, you can always use your cutter. This groove right here in your cutter is a scoring platform. Now, the Fiskars comes with the scoring blade, but you can just use a bone folder or any kind of scoring tool, and you can score on this. Let's see if I can find a piece of cardstock here in my trash stash. Yeah, here we go. And you can place it and score, and you can get a decent score line from it, as you can see that. Okay. All right, so we're going to do some scoring on Kraft stock, and we're going to be scoring at a quarter of an inch. You can still do that on here because you have all your measurements here. So if you don't have a scoreboard, don't freak out. You'll still be able to do the project. In terms of paper supplies that you'll need, if you are we're going to work with Kraft stock and red cardstock. If you I lost my train of thought. Oh, if you're using 12 by 12 Kraft stock, then you're only going to need one sheet of Kraft paper, and you should be able to get all of your cuts from that one sheet. If you're using 8.5 by 11, then you'll probably need 2 sheets of Kraft cardstock in order to get all of the cuts. Then you're going to need 1 piece of red cardstock that's cut to 4.25 by 11, which is just taking a 8.5 by 11 sheet of cardstock and cutting it down the middle so that you get your 4.25 by 11. you're going to need a heart die. I'm using the Memory Box Open Studio stitched heart layered dies, but whatever dies you have, as long as you have two sizes that, or you can maybe use one size and make it work. When you get into the project, you can determine, but most of these um, dies, layered dies, have the sets that can be inset one inside the other. And you're going to need some type of sentiment die. I'm using the Holtz sentiments, but there again, you can use whatever you have to make your project work. You will also need some type of designer paper or patterned paper to cut and cover one of your hearts, and you'll see when we get started. I use this because the colors coordinate so well with the Kraft paper color. So I just centered one of my dies over this design here because I thought that was so pretty. So you can see where I cut one out on this corner. So that's what you'll need. I think that is everything. Like I said, it's a very, very simple project. All right, so I'm going to get my scoreboard over here, and I've done quite a bit of this off camera because, as I said, I need to have this ready for a challenge, and I want to try and have it done on time tomorrow. So here we go. Now, if you have a scoreboard, you're going to take your 4 1/4 by 11-inch piece of paper, place it on your scoreboard, and you're going to score at 3 1/2. Or if you don't have a scoreboard and you're using your ruler, you're just going to draw a line at 3 1/2 inches. Then you're going to count over, because you want to have at least 4 1/4 inches in the middle of your card. So if you count over, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4 1/4, and make your next score line, because you're just trying to get your panels even. Okay, this panel will be about 1/4 inch larger than the end panel, but the important thing is that this section here in the middle between these two score lines measures 4 1/4 inches. Okay, so once you've gotten that done, once you've finished scoring this, you can put this to one side for a minute and cut out your hearts, whatever size hearts you're going to use. I'm using the largest size and then the second size down. I cut my hearts out of the card stock and the Kraft card, and I use them to trace the design of the hearts on my panel. So once I had the size of hearts that I wanted cut out, I folded and burnished one end of one side of the card. I'm using these Teflon bone folders. Are really fantastic because they don't leave a shiny impression on your papers or shiny mark on your paper, and you'll get that with the plastic or the traditional bone folders. So when I want a project to look pretty, I use this bone folder. These are a little pricier, but they're worth the investment. You're going to cut a lot of this away, but for the purposes of this, we really don't want shiny stuff on it. So you take your largest heart, place it at whatever angle you want, however you want your card to fold. This is one that I have already cut off camera. Then I just placed my largest heart here. You know, so just position it how you want it, at what angle you would like for it to, however you want your card to open. Okay? And once you have it in place, take your pencil and trace around your heart. So just trace this design all the way around. And once you have traced it, you're going to take your scissors and cut your heart design out. And you're going to do that with both hearts, the small one and the large one. Okay? So you take the large one, position it here, and I determined my position so that I captured the entire heart here, and that, you know, it was still on the cardstock. And then with the smaller one, it doesn't matter, because however you position the small one, you will capture. You know, there's a lot of additional paper here. See? So trace this heart on the short, trace your big heart on the large panel, okay, and make this angle. I know I'm repeating myself, but I want to make sure that you're getting the picture. So you trace the big heart on the large panel, and then you trace your smaller heart on the other panel. So I guess it would be a big heart on the left, small heart on the right. Trace, then cut. Once you've traced and cut, you should end up with something that looks like this. I'm trying to get my hand. So you can see that. There's my big heart, and there's my small heart. Okay? Now, don't worry about the pencil marks, because you can see the lines where I traced my heart. Around the edges you can see the pencil marks. But we're going to cover those, so it doesn't matter, because you're going to put your Kraft stock over those. So don't worry about that. All right, so let's take some time to get our paper cut. And remember, at the very edge, you don't want to cut. When you're tracing, you're going to have this small little area that remains attached. Okay, so just remember, you don't want to cut all the way through. You're still going to have the little section of the heart that's still attached to the card, so you get that wrap effect. Okay, so let's take some time for you to do that, and then we'll come back and move on. Okay, so while we were away, I tried to adjust my camera so that we would have a better angle of seeing the cards. I think you can see more now of exactly what you should have at this point. The next thing that you are going to do is to cut a piece of Kraft card to 4 and a quarter by 4 1/4. She'll give you a square card. Now, I decided that I wanted my card to have a little bit of a border, so I cut my Kraft card a little smaller than um, 4 1/4. I did it like 4 1/8 by 4 1/8, so that I would have an eighth of an inch border all the way around on my card. I also use my scoreboard to score this Kraft card at 1/4 inch all the way across, and then I or applied wink of, well, first I applied Tim Holtz Vintage Photo Distress ink all the way around the edges, and then I lightly brushed my applicator, my sponge, across the top of the cardstock to add some depth to the Kraft card. Once that was done, I applied Wink of Stella to each one of the score lines on here so that you can see that. Oh, it's showing up very nicely. So I just thought that would give it a very interesting look. And this is going to be the center portion of our card. For our flaps, you need one Kraft heart for the inside. You can apply to the inside. And let me move this. And you're going to need a second one to apply to the outside of your card. And because I'm using the stitch die, I cut all of my hearts at the same time, so all of them did not get the really pretty stitch design. But then I really like the way it looked, because it looks like front and back. So you have the pronounced stitch design on the front, and then a less pronounced one on the back, so that when this closes, this is the look you will get. Now you can use, you don't have to use Kraft. You can make your hearts white if that's what you want. This isn't a Valentine's card for me. I just happen to love Kraft card, and I thought this would make a pretty card. So why don't we go ahead and cut, if you have all your hearts cut. Now I did extras. I did extra hearts because I wanted my cards on the front. I wanted these to have a little, I didn't want to use dimensions on it, so no foam tape on here to give it dimension. So I thought if I glued two of these together, then that would give it a little more dimension, and it wouldn't be so flat. And I'm thinking that I might need to do a third one. But when you're looking at yours, it's one of those things where you've got to visually decide if the project looks interesting enough to you. So yeah, I think I'm going to cut one more and have 3 of these hearts on the front, and then the one for the back. So you're going to need, if you're doing what I'm doing, you will need 4 of your large hearts, and you will need 5 of the smaller hearts, because you're going to have one of the smaller hearts in the middle of your card. Okay, so I'm going to go away and cut the additional hearts that I need, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I had one of those moments of serendipity. I was searching through my scrap pile looking for a small enough piece of craft card to cut out my additional hearts. And I ran across some scraps of the lightweight chipboard, and this is perfect. So what I'm going to do is make this lightweight chipboard my top layer, and then for the two beneath that, I'm just going to apply a little glue. I think I should have gotten well, this set came with different size. I'm saying lumens because that's probably a holdover from a nursing, but I want this to spread around sort of evenly, so I'm going to use my finger to get better coverage. I don't want it to buckle up and have those little bumps. Sometimes if you leave it down in just dots, it will, you'll get those little bumps, and I don't want that. So I'm taking my two craft card hearts and gluing them together. Okay. And now I'm going to put a little extra glue on the back of my chipboard heart. I'm so glad I found this by accident, because it gives me additional weight, and that additional weight will help keep the card closed even when the closer is not on it. And I still haven't decided how I'm going to close this card. I just feel like I need to get it put together, and then I'll figure out the closing. I need a baby wipe, excuse me. Okay. I usually keep my baby wipes right by me, but I was working on the other side of my table. Okay, so I've got that one down, and I want to be careful because I don't think I'm going to do anything to this, so any marks or sticky glue stuff that gets on it will be on it. And I'm going to use my most essential crafting tool. These pin curl clips, as I've said in previous videos, I would not be able to craft without these. They've just become like a vital part of my crafting DNA. Now I'm going to take this remaining heart, and I am going to apply it to the back side. And remember to spread this around. And I'm going to apply this right here. Let's see, get that going. Okay, I'm not really worried about any overlap. I probably should have put the front one on first, but it didn't. So we'll see. And like I said, I'm not really that concerned about it. Any overlap will just add to the effect of the design. So let me make sure, yep, that I have those. I'm going to go ahead and put the big one on the back. Okay, here we go. Okay, so you get the idea of how you want to apply your hearts. So I'm going to go away, take a moment to get this done, and I'll be right back. Okay, I want to show you something that I did before I apply the craft card to my front heart. Because I added the lightweight chipboard to this, and that gave it extra weight, and I decided that I wanted to use some score tape. You can use any kind of double-sided tape. You can use the red tape. It has a very aggressive hold and will work. And there are others out there that work just as well. But I put down score tape, and I am now adding wet glue to that. And I put the wet glue on top of the score tape as well, because that gives you time. If you put the snail glue on top of the score tape, it gives you a little time to move it around, because normally score tape, once it's down, it's down. So you can buy some move around time for yourself by putting glue on top of the double-sided tape. Okay, so I think, let me move that out of there. So I think that's got that. I'm going to put my clips on just the same, but I've got that score tape on there, so I'm sure that will stay down. And I'm going to repeat that process with the large heart, putting the score tape down and then putting the snail glue on top of it. Okay, be right back. Okay, so now we should have something that looks like this. Okay, and open here and open here. And you have a very finished look on both the inside and the outside of your card. And if you have cut your middle panel and scored it and applied the Wink of Stella, if that's what you wanted to do, however you want to decorate the inside is really up to you. This is just the design that I want to use. Now, I told you earlier that I cut out, let's see, where is it? I cut out this corner. I just cut out that little square of paper, and I cut the heart shape from that. Then I cut, because I thought, oh, I want a little more, something a little more interesting in the middle. So what I did was I cut 2 more hearts out of the Kraft card, and I staggered them so that I have 1, 2, 3. But I made the stagger like maybe 1/16 of an inch. You don't want too much. And I applied Wink of Stella all the way around, so that when I put it on here, let me see if I can, let's see, where are my lifesavers? This is how I always mock up my projects before I finalize them. I use my little paper clips, pin curl clips, to pin everything in place so I can look at it. I like the sparkle on that. And I'm not a glittery person, but I've been using a lot of Wink of Stella lately, and I'm starting to like it. I don't know if I'm going to use any more of it on this card. I might. For my sentiment, I used that Tim Holtz set, and I cut out the word cherish. And let's see if I can get that up under my clip. Yeah, there we go. You see why I love these little clips? I can see what things look like before I start gluing stuff down. So I just put the word cherish in the middle. And when your card is closed, you will have just the very tip of that left showing. And of course, we still have to decide what we're going to do with the front of this card. And I'm thinking that I'm just going to put a little Wink of Stella around the edges. Maybe not, because that might be a bit much. We'll see. But go ahead and cut out your heart for your middle panel and your Kraft card panel if you haven't done that already. I am going to add foam tape behind the double-sided foam tape behind this because I want it to have a little bit of dimension. I have, I forget the size, but they're very, very small, so it won't lift it up too much. Sometimes on projects like this, I will use Kraft foam because it will give you that added dimension, but it doesn't add too much bulk because this has a lot of bulk already, and so you don't want to have too much going on with that. Okay, so let's work on that, and I'll be back. So I decided that I was not going to dimension my center heart, so I decided to use the score tape and the snail glue. And I wanted to show you, the newcomers, the newbies, another little trick. Sometimes when you're working with double-sided tape, especially after you've burnished it to make sure that it really adheres, it can be the dickens trying to get it up. And an easy way to get the release paper off is to use your um, pokey tool, as we all call it, to remove the release paper. And that will make the task easier because sometimes it can be a challenge to get that off, particularly on the score tape. It sometimes sticks aggressively. And again, I'm putting snail glue on top of this double stick tape because I want to be able to move this heart around a little bit. And I'm not going to smear it. So put this, I think I had it right here. And I'm going to close these for a minute before okay, now, please, please, please let me move it up just a little bit, like that. And trying not to press down on it. Up right there. Oops, I think that's it. Let's close this. And that's it. And it's kind of hidden, so now I can smash it. I don't want to smash too hard. And there. So I've got my heart in place. And I'm going to, where I've sort of manipulated and handled this, I'm going to go back and reapply or add a little more Wink of Stella. Now the final thing that I'm going to do for the inside is to put my Cherish sentiment right on the center. I don't know how I'm going to photograph this for the challenge. I'll figure something out. Now this is when I love having this small opening on this particular glue applicator rather than using one of the needles with a larger opening. And mostly that's what I use this for, is applying intricate die cuts when it's very, very thin and you want to get a good seal. Now I've started using my snail glue for everything pretty much because I really, really, really love being able to correct my mistakes. And it dries clear, so just like the Aleene's and some of the other more expensive glues, I've found that I have as much, if not better, success just using the Elmer's. Okay, so I got my sentiment down. It's going to take a minute for it to dry, but that's what it looks like so far. bring this up to the camera so you can see it. Oops, going the wrong way. I have to remember opposite. Okay. And I think I'm going to leave this exactly as it is. I'm not going to add anything else to this focal image on the inside. And I'm not going to add anything else here on the inside because I don't need to. I just put these on to cover it up. But once these are dry, the only other thing I might do is put a little Tim Holtz vintage photo around the edges of my hearts, but nothing else. If I had been thinking about it earlier, I would have scored my paper. Once I cut my hearts, I would have scored them, but I think it's going to be okay, just like this. And that's so nice. See, when it folds, now it looks like you can't see that. It's just two hearts. Okay, so I'm going to work on the hearts on the outside, find some sentiments to go on there, or a way to close it. That's the real issue. How do we close this card? We can wrap it. We can put something here that will keep it closed. And like I said, add sentiments here. I don't know. I may add sentiments there. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. In the end, what I decided was that I was not going to add any additional closing elements to this card because it's already a lot busier than most of my cards are. Try to get a little closer view. There you go. So I just took the Tim Holtz. I'm trying to get there the best light for this. I just took the Tim Holtz vintage photo distress ink and just tried to shade in some color on the cardstock. Well, that was actually that chipboard. And then I went around the edges and traced the edges with a little more Wink of Stella and applied my sentiments. So we have forever, love, and cherish. And I think that is quite enough. Now, for those of you who are a little bit more adventurous and you like putting additional elements on your card, you can do so. But I like it just like this. And I'm just going to put it in a plain cream colored envelope. And I think it's going to work really well with it. So I hope that this tutorial made sense to you. I would love to see any cards that you might make using this technique. You can use, I used a heart simply because that was what the challenge was for the Shopping Our Stash design team. But you can use any die you have. Just look at it and say, oh, this might make a good wrap card. And like I said, publish them. I would really, really like to see them. And thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you next time. Bye.